The living logos, the word made flesh. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. We're going to be talking about the logos. And what does logos necessarily mean? It represents the logic of reality, of creation reality, however you want to look at it. It is the there are also icons. What is a logo? Every company has a logo. It has an emblem, it has a sign that embodies the entire structure. It is the it is a representation of the whole thing. And that's what a logo is supposed to do. Now, if you notice my symbol here, that if it's on my profile picture, and I use this. And I want to talk about how I came and I ended up drawing this sigil or symbol, or what I call the actual logos. And when I call this the logos, it represents the underlying structure of all reality. It represents the fractal template, and it creates a certain type of prism that can become any and all things that could ever be imagined. And I have captured this in a two-dimensional, flattened out symbol. All right. And I'm also going to talk about HAWAYAKA, the word made flesh. HAWAYAKA, the word, because this sigil also contains the entire word HAWAYAKA in it. So, wait here. Let's see if I got my pencil here. Yes, I do. Let's come over here. I'm going to create a new layer so I don't. So if you notice, so you have the H here. So we have an H, and then, the point could be there for this is what bridges these two things together. Now you can include the circle if you want to. And then we also have the A. Okay. So this would be the ha. And then the same thing here. We have the H here, and then we have the W here. And what's really great, awesome about this sigil is you can get the entire HAWAYAKA name right side up or upside down. It doesn't really matter. And of course, we could add more connecting lines to this, and it can also render the sigil or the name HAWAYAKA from all four directions. But what I did is I really simplified this, and it's going to be really, what I'm going to share with you is how I even came up with this, because the first time I ever drew this shape, it was all channeled. I just drew it. There's no really thinking about what I was doing. I was just kind of automatically writing what this symbol was. But say we get the W too. So we also get the W. Whoops. Here. We have the W. I don't know why it's doing that, y'all. Let's try that one more time. The W. That's okay. And then they're also the same thing with the A. The A would also be here. And then we have the wa, and then the ya. So you also have it here, and you also have it here too. So it doesn't matter, whatever direction. See, it's also upside down also. So we have the ya. Oops. We have the ya. And then the A would be like this. Sorry, y'all. My pen is acting strange. So we have the ya. And then the same thing, we can get also the ka. And we can do the A. And then this gives us the four parts of the name. And these also, to me, represent, actually, before we get into me breaking down the HAWAYAKA and how even encoded in this name means self-mastery, I want to talk about how I even got this name. And now remember here, everything that I'm sharing with you guys in this video, it's a reflection of my perspective, of my own journey through my life, trying to come to the full realization of how and why I exist. And it led me on a certain type of journey through this life of mine. And what eventually ended up happening is during COVID-19, I was about 33. I was 33 years old, and I worked at the power company, and I decided to quit that job. A lot of different things was going on. I was contending with some personal things, and I was really just beginning to be fed up with life in general. I was just like, why am I doing all this? I wasn't happy with the direction my life was going. And I realized the people around me didn't care how I felt, so I basically had to make a very bold move, and I ended up quitting that job. And after I quit that job, I soon after that had a near death experience at the age of 33. And I was faced with kind of like a red dragon looking creature, and it wanted to eat me. And now reflecting back, see that dragon it's basically, it represents any kind of all of our repressed emotions and fears and things like that we haven't fully contended with or faced head on. And and I realized, so I went against that dragon. I fought against it, and then I defeated it, and then I came back into my body, and I could feel that energy release out of the crown of my head. Like it was literally like spiraled out of me, and it was like I could hear it hissing. It was like some type of energy within my body that I was able to release. And what's actually interesting, soon after that, I lost like 30 pounds, and it was just completely reinvigorated with life again. It was just like it got this thing out of me, whatever it was. I realized it was blocking my crown. And I've traced this entity, this idea. You can watch some other videos where I talk about Yahweh and what that coding represents, the cannibalizing serpent that wants to keep eating and regurgitating you, keeping you playing out the same script. But that's how I got the name HAWAYAKA, because soon after that event, I would just naturally start chanting that name, HAWAYAKA. And I had no idea what it meant. It was this natural, it was like this natural chant was just coming out of me, because it's like I went through the process of experiencing death and coming back from that. And that was like my chant of victory. I now know it's basically because I collapsed my consciousness and I brought it back online. That process is a representation of my own frequency. It's the part of me that's both in and out of my body. It's the parts of me that is reflecting against itself, which creates the reality in which I'm experiencing. And this represents the completion of that circuit, the collapsing of the conscious, and unfolding it back out. And then, from me writing out this name, I just also naturally gravitated to, I drew this symbol, and I started reflecting on this symbol that I made. It's taken me quite a few years to really start to grasp and understand what this symbol is, because not only did I draw the symbol, but I was really starting to draw the kind of like the holographic structure of what reality is. And through several years of really meditating on this symbol, on this sigil, is it really showed me that it does represent the eternal it basically represents the eternal structure of reality. It is the logic engine. It is the structure itself that can become anything that you could ever imagine. Again, the holographic prism. And I got this shape by going through that near death experience, coming back, chanting this name, putting this name together, and realizing, because again, a large portion of my life, I've been on this self actualization journey of really wanting to kind of like reverse engineer my own psyche and reality and their interconnection to each other, to really try to grasp why I exist. And through this process, I realized I exist because I wanted to exist, right? This is where it's basically realizing the spirit or will of the light of myself is that same will. It's if you when I talk about these things, it's this coding is found within all things. Maybe not necessarily the HAWAYAKA name. This is just from my perspective and my journey, but at least the sigil, the logos, it can and it is a holographic prism. It represents the coding, kind of like within the pineal gland. It's the crystal, and within the prism or the program, the idea. See, whatever idea you imagine, it can begin to materialize those things. And going through and reflecting on this is basically what showed me how, again, reality exists because it wants to exist. Its will to see itself, and by that will to see itself, it causes the mind to fold into itself. And the process of the mind squaring itself and circling itself, it reverberates itself. It creates a certain type of frequency, and eventually, it slows down to the kind of the density that we're at, to where we can have these types of experiences. It slows down to a state which we're experiencing it now in the third dimension. And basically what I have learned is we change. See, the more we begin to put ourselves within the driver's seat of our own existence, this is what increases your ability to directly impact the wave that's being generated within within reality. This is how you begin to transmute and change the world in which you experience. Again, this is why I call this the living logos. The living logos. Here, I'm gonna get all these. Let's see. There we go. Okay. And the word made flesh. So HAWAYAKA represents, to me, from my perspective, from my own creation of how I willed myself into existence by speaking this name, HAWAYAKA, and how this name actually folds into itself. It represents the processes of willing yourself into existence and coming back to the realization of that fact. And another way we can look at the HAWAYAKA name. So Ha, I see it as the breath. Wa, it's like the water. Ya, Ya is the heart. And Ka is the mind. So this could also be, let's see, this could be fire. The heart is earth. The mind is air. And then, of course, water. And this could also be the womb. So again, this process is the breath of fire in the water. So again, the water, like the breathing within the water. This is what a lot of people talk about, separating the waters from the waters. This is like creating the bubble within the ocean of the mind. The eternal, whatever you want to call it. It could just, it's like, I imagine it as just being like an infinite blank canvas. And a lot of people like to call it the water. It's like space, outer space, whatever you want to call it, the fabric of reality itself. And Ha is you're breathing, you're creating something, you're separating the water from itself, creating a new structure. And the Ya is the process of the merging of those two opposites of fire and water, to then that's what creates a new environment. This is going to be the action. And then the Ka is kind of like the spark that ignites it, and what creates the electromagnetic holographic prism. It is the mind, it is the intelligence of the whole thing of itself. And I had I don't know if I have it here with me, But you know, also breaking this down Semitically, if we were to look at, say, the ancient Phoenician alphabet of the HAWAYAKA, it's it really is, especially if you take out the olive, because that's what they all share in common. Even on the sigil, they all share this common. It is each individual letter is a certain type of action on the aleph, and the aleph, the A, you know, it was traditionally seen as like an ox head. It is the thing in the mind. So the HAWAYAKA represents mastering the mind to come to the full realization through self-actualization of the gnosis of how you brought yourself into existence and how reality works in general. At least the underlying structure of it. And HAWAYAKA is like the merging of the elements. And then together, so they're the four elements coming together, right? Making you the fifth element. You are the ether. You are the thing creating the structure. Because that's really what this is. It's a structure. The logos is a living structure. And HAWAYAKA is the act of creating that structure. And mastering that structure, to know that you architected the structure, you're the one who's architecting the structure and the one who's living through that structure. You are both in and out of it. And it is the process of you trying to reflect against yourself. So the thing inside of the structure and the thing in the mind outside of the structure. And when I say that, it's not necessarily a another person and there's you. It's the mind itself. Imagine it's like, so the circle of the HAWAYAKA sigil here, it is the all encompassing circle. It is the mind that contains all things. It is the overarching thing. This circle is trying to collapse to this center point. It's trying to collapse to the center point here. And the process of this circle trying to collapse to the point, and then the reverberation from that point back out to the perimeter here, it begins to create like an oscillating type of motion. And the structure here, if we were really look at this would be actually inside of a kind of like a pyramid in a sense. It is kind of like a pyramid. Here we can do like another square here so you can see. It is a it would basically be the thing inside of the pyramid. I like to think of it like that. It represents a certain type of structure. It is an eternal structure that is capable of perfectly and equidistantly reflecting against itself. It is like the perfect squaring and circling of itself. And what this does is it creates a stabilized electromagnetic kind of realm, or I call it like a bubble. It's an egg. I call it like a blank dragon egg is what I like to refer to it as. Here, I got some pictures here. So if we look at the sigil again, we can look at it within kind of the electromagnetic or a magnetic field here. And what this sigil kind of shows is, within this field, there is a prism that basically creates kind of like a crystalline type of form here. And here I drew a picture. Here we go. So if you were to take this sigil and it was instead of it just being a stationary two-dimensional object, if it was, say, turned on, or it was alive right now, this is kind of what it would more look like. It would look like this certain type of plasma bubble, which basically would be a field or a way of it circulating its own energy. It is a pillar. Let's see if I have another. I thought I had another image. But see, this is basically just a top-down view of that. Another way you could see this, if it could be like this, and you'd have the center here, and there would actually be like a pyramid in the middle of it. And if, why do we have this pyramid? Why do we have this structure? Why, even like the Great Pyramid, which again, the Great Pyramid is a pillar. It is like that book of life. It is, it is a container of information and wisdom and knowledge that demonstrates and shows how the holographic reality works and its connection to the actual soul. Because that's really what the soul is. The soul is a program. It is the program of the avatar, right? And the program of the avatar is what is the fractal template of the electromagnetic realm that you're in. Like, we are in a realm, we are in a container. This realm, this world in which we live, the universe, the you in a verse of a story, which is a script of how energy moves through itself. And the script of this world, whoever built the Great Pyramid of Giza, because what is the Great Pyramid? It is a self-referencing system. That's really what a soul is. That's what a shim is, a pillar, a pyramid, container of information. It is the coding of a self-referencing holographic template. And that shim, what is also a name, see, once you self-actualize within the coding of the realm you're in, it generates like a name. And this is where a lot of people, they get YHWH. This is the result of a shim or a name of a certain type of prism, which is the world in which we live right now. See, this is the God of this world, okay? And this basically means this is the coding within the cube or the box or the prism. That it is the image. It is the image, the word. Yahweh is the word or image being projected through the logos that gets made flesh, the word made flesh. HAWAYAKA is my own image that I developed through my own self-actualization process. So it's basically, well, I'm actually going to be remaking myself through this image, through the logos, because this name develops the logos. The name is, it is a certain type of circuit, just like Yahweh is a certain type of circuit. Yahweh is the Ouroboros. It is the snake eating its own tail. This is the Yahweh program. It's samsara. And HAWAYAKA is a totally different, instead of, because this is just an internally cannibalizing spiral. And then it gets to zero, and then it resets, and then it just plays out the same story over and over and over again. Like from Genesis to Revelation, you'll just keep repeating that same type of circuit. And if you want to develop yourself into a new image, you want to live in possibly even another realm. You basically, whatever shim or pyramid or world that you're in, the god of it, it's basically the builder program within the capstone of the pyramid that builds out the whole body. Right? This is the coding within the pineal gland. This is the thing you wrestle against if you want to be made into something else. And if you want to know how it's conditioned and programmed, just read the Bible. But I do have some videos about the Ouroboros of the Bible and how that program works. It's almost like an adversary that you resist against. If you can resist against this code and overcome it, it unlocks a totally different level of perception and knowing of yourself. It allows you to become more self-aware. So HAWAYAKA, the act of speaking yourself into creation, the merging of the elements of it is a builder program. This would be a program that goes within the capstone. It is the word made flesh. This word, HAWAYAKA, made flesh through the logos, which it creates. And you can see, so I even show a transformational process of this. If you were to take this and make it more three-dimensional, it would create kind of like this cubooctahedron shape, which it has 12 equidistant points within this shape, and it basically has the ability to fold in on itself. And I don't know if I have it here. Yes. So I've broken this down into a certain type of grid, but again, it's showing like a pyramid, and as it collapses through itself, it is actually, if you notice, it starts off like this, but then it ends like this. So it's actually folding through itself and collapsing into this shape. So you can go back and forth through it. So imagine it is collapsing in and out of itself. It's basically like a tesseract in a sense. It's taking uh, programming for outside of your container, this contained world, right? This is why you experience time in a linear fashion. But what this is then, for me, this is demonstrating you're recreating, you're going at, you're breaking through your current conditioning and programming, which opens you up to the higher order or the different layer of the builder aspect of reality, which then allows you to reimagine something new and different and then fold it back into existence. It's reality folding through itself, and you can actually tap your conscious into that process. And the better you get at being able to tap your mind into the process of of basically, you become more sensitive and aware of this process within reality. And it kind of does something to your pineal, where it kind of really, like, you really begin to sense that, reality is a frequency, and you can become more sensitive to that process. Okay. Let's see. What else did I want to show you guys? So yes, so the sigil or the symbol is basically that eternal prism. I kind of drew it again here. This kind of shows, I call it again the philosopher's stone. It is the eternal prism. It is an electromagnetic realm. It is the egg. It is the dragon egg. It is the cosmic egg that can birth and hatch anything. You just, and then kind of like, really, what a lot of, like, me meditating on this and going through this, it's really been helping me to reverse engineer just how reality builds itself. Even like the name, when you name something, it's not what you think it is. Like that name, whatever you name something, it contains sets of instructions. Like in the Bible, when Adam's naming everything, he's basically, think about it, through the imagination, especially if we're in this kind of state of consciousness, when we're in this kind of slower, more dense dimension, it takes a lot longer for us to manifest the things we can imagine. But in a different state of consciousness, say if we're able to perceive these things at a higher order than we're currently experiencing them, then, when you speak something, it's you're collapsing these different fields in a certain way that causes it to develop something. That's what's happening when you're imagining something. When you're building, you're basically building something in the field that can then be grounded into experience. And that's, again, what HAWAYAKA means. It represents me speaking myself into existence. I named it, I put myself within it, and now I'm experiencing it. I created a soul for the spirit of my own mind to live through. The will of myself to exist and experience myself is the light which shines through the name that I'm making myself through, which is the act of me bringing myself into existence. The word made flesh. It is the God I am making myself through. Now, when I say God, I'm not talking about, we're all fractals of the eternal. This is how I perceive, like, source or whatever you want to call it. Reality is technically not it's non-local. It's this eternal prism template in my opinion, is found within everything. Because it is it is the fundamental fractal underlying structure of the system. And I kind of drew what this is. Kind of looks like a checkerboard, right? I think there's even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So this would be an 8 by 8. Why 8? Why 8? 8 and 88. And interesting enough, I don't know if you've seen Back to the Future, that represents time travel. Time travel, correct? And this is also like the chessboard. You also hear piano keys. The checkered board represents that underlying structure. It's like the skeleton. It is the kind of like, a lot of people call it the DMT realm too. I have another one where I show this same type of template, but it's more of a fractal now, where I have the template folding into itself within a larger board of itself. And this is a 2D view. If you imagine this as a multidimensional structure, you kind of are left with what a lot of people would consider like the DMT world. And within each one of these could be like an entire universe. This could be its own little fractal universe that you live in. And then, you know, and then there's an infinite amount of different variations of those same things that we all could potentially, we can tap into this, because that's really what you are as a person. You are a program built through a pyramid, which is, the pyramid is it's a representation of the structure. It's the squaring of the circle. It's the thing that generates the illusion of it being separated of itself. Because if you really think, if we just kind of like play this out in our minds, in order to see yourself, you first have to separate a piece. Not necessarily, it's not that you're separate from it, but you create the illusion of something. That way you can look into it and look out of it to see yourself. And that process of, we can, so if it's like, say, again, like a circle folding into itself, it would basically be, so as that process, that mentality of wanting to fold through itself, see itself, again, this is what creates this kind of ordeal, the torus field. And it's kind of like a wormhole in a sense. It's, if we were looking at this from the side, but if you're looking at this from the top down, you just see it is, you'd be like you falling through a tunnel. You just keep going in and out of yourself. Can't really, who wants to do that? Eventually you get bored of that. So what you actually need, so this is only like one, 2 points. You have like the positive and negative. You're just being sucked into yourself. You do need that prism, because that prism in between is what allows the mind to create a certain type of holographic reality. So instead of it just being you falling through a hole, what you're gonna, it's basically what's gonna happen is it's gonna shift it to where you're gonna be able to see. It'd basically be like a checkerboard on the floor, and let's see here. Sorry, y'all. So you would have this visual of it being like this infinite plane. Imagine there being a checkerboard floor and ceiling, but there really was no depth. There, it didn't feel like a ground. Like, so imagine if you're just floating through this space, it would feel infinite. You could just endlessly fly through it, and it would just be like the checkerboard regenerating itself. And you could feel like you're going as high as you could want to ever go for infinity, in a sense. And this is what I call the eternal prism that that can basically, it is like it's like a blank space that it's like a world that then has other worlds in it that you can keep going into those worlds. It's basically, imagine it as the structure that allows the mind to continuously cycle its energy, even though it's simulating an infinite amount of different potential realities of itself. And that's where this is what this sigil really represents. It represents the mind eternally reflecting against itself, and the way it's able to balance itself out and experience itself through so many different types of lenses or perspectives of itself is because of this type of design. It is the eternal prism, is what I call it. I call it the philosopher's stone. It's the logos. And if you notice here, I kind of show the alphabet and I show the runes. And I'm sure there's all kinds of other interesting things you can get. But this sigil not only has the name HAWAYAKA in it, but I discovered that it also has, you can get the entire alphabet out of it and all the numbers. And then I also discovered that I could get all the runes out of it. And that makes sense because, what is the person? The person is the program. It is the thing being made through the logos. The word represents the builder program within the center of the mind, of the prism, that then creates a certain type of program. All right, this is your genetics, your genes, your genesis. This becomes the image you make yourself through. And I just happen to develop and channel this symbol because after my near-death experience and going through that process, soon after that, I went into a trance, and I literally, what I ended up seeing, I saw this shape here, kind of like the little flower of life shape here, and all the circles merged into a single circle. And I flew through that portal. I saw something that kind of looked like those angels. It kind of looked like this, an eye, but again, it had like these, it looked like this, where it looked like wings almost around this center eye here. And what ended up happening is those wings began to spin really, really, really fast. And then I was able to go into that farther. And I realized I was projecting my own consciousness into the center of my own brain. And that's when, too, I began to really start to know what this shape is, what this represents. Because again, I'm showing these things as static, but again, this is something that's reverberating and can constantly change and update itself. This is just kind of like a crystallized view of this electromagnetic type of thing, and how I've been able to decode how reality builds itself. See, you have to have an image or an idea of yourself that you keep making yourself through. And that model of yourself, the idea of yourself, is what then allows the mind to reverberate through a holographic prism to build itself out. And then the process of it doing that creates a self-referencing fractal template. That is how the entire reality builds itself. It's all a self-referencing model of itself. Like even here on Earth, in our bodies, they mirror each other. That's because we're made from the same thing. We're made from the same program. We're made from the same yeah, just it's all one program containing the whole thing. It is the image in the box. HAWAYAKA is what that name means to me. And back to the fractal aspects of the word making itself. Just kind of some of the, showing these same things, because after again meditating on this sigil, I began to really experiment with it really unlocked like a certain type of grid pattern in my mind, which is how I've been able to draw these things and just reflect on these things about how reality creates itself and how this geometry and the constants within our reality, like the fine structure constant and things with the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence, and just the just it's so obvious that this reality is fractal and how the coding of itself is found within everything around us. And this, naturally, you begin to reverse engineer those things, and it really helps you unveil a new model. And here, I drew a picture of it. So this is like, again, like a three-dimensional version of the sigil. Like if you were to take that sigil or that symbol of the logos and you were to really unfold it into its actual form, it would be like this. So within here would be like the universe. And this system, this prism, is what allows, so like that circle. So as the mind folds through itself to here and then reflects back out, this is what creates a self-referencing holographic prism or world for you to live in. This is really what a shim is. A shim is a system of knowing. It's the, this is also the arc. It's the arc of the mind. It's because, when you have holes in your perspective, right, the waters outside of you, like the waters outside are, it represents it represents the whole mind, because the mind is trying to fold in to itself. And basically, you learning and self-reflecting is reverse engineering how the mind could create a system that allows itself to perfectly reflect itself. And as you go through that process of reverse engineering reality, um, it led me to the logos, which is this symbol here. It is a two-dimensional key, in a sense, that helps you unlock the geometry of how the eternal prism of the mind is structured and how it can create. Because like even like our language, it's different angles. These different, you know these different symbols here creates an entire character, and these symbols represent different angles. So like every single letter is found within our electromagnetic field, and based off of our mind, the way we perceive ourselves and how it engages the collapsing wave of the mind through our reality and through our own conscious as we interface with it, this is how we've generated language. Because this language and these things that we use to describe the world around us and ourselves are going to be natural manifestations of that, because we live within an intelligent system that knows how it brought itself into existence, and it is self-aware. And we are like fractals of that. And I believe it is our purpose to, we are to self-actualize into the knowing of this. And this is how we become co-creators. We gain more power of our ability to use our imagination and to learn how reality works, so we can begin to better interface with those forces that are already there. And we become more aware of them, which then allows us to create and architect our own experiences. And we already kind of do this. I mean, if you look at humanity, we have terraformed the entire earth. We have altered everything about it to be more convenient to us and the things that we want to do. We already do this at a pretty high order, but I think we can even take this a step farther, to where we can elevate our consciousness to be more attuned to uh, the aspects beyond just what we're seeing with our physical eyes. That by being able to tap into that field outside of the one that we're immediately aware of is where we can begin to have bigger overarching changing uh, bigger changes within the reality we experience. Even time travel. See, I see time travel like if you look in the stars, they say I'm not here to argue with people about your worldview. If you think the Earth is flat, or you believe in um, the traditional mainstream scientific view of what outer space and planets and galaxies and all that. I'm not here to argue with you on that, but one thing you can say, so they tell you that each star, like if there were life on other planets and we could actually travel there, by the time we got there, they would probably be extinct. So I don't see I see space travel as time travel, and I see time travel and space travel also as fractal travel. What we can do, I think we can even develop our own minds to do this, to where you can unplug your awareness from one perception of reality and migrate it to a different plane. It may look like you're traveling to another world. It may appear that you're traveling light years to the other side of the universe, but all in actuality, all you're doing is you're folding your consciousness back up into its frequency form, and you're able to then move it, like changing the channel on the TV, and you're able to change your experience of reality to a totally different model of experience. And this has been my kind of journey in my life of basically even to that near death experience of realizing this, like, this isn't just I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. A lot of all these things that I share and the things that I'm coming up with, it's coming from me folding my consciousness through itself, and ultimately coming to the conclusion that our we're here really, in my opinion, is to develop these abilities to have a more where we can actually fine tune our experience of reality ourselves, instead of just blindly following a script, right? Because, like, say, even with like Yahweh, or example, or whatever gods, or whenever you follow those things, you're signing yourself up to have that type of experience, right? Where Yahweh kind of creates, you're going to be created into vessels to where I have learned that it makes it hard to self actualize, where it's going to keep cycling you through a system of you being more like a slave, where you become the battery source for the reality, and it becomes harder for you to change the coding of it. Whereas, like, HAWAYAKA to me is more of a sovereign. It's like, no, I spoke myself into existence. I will myself into existence. I am the master of myself. I take control over my experience of reality. And let's see, what else did I want to talk with you guys about? I kind of showed you the fractal template. Again, these are just some visual drawings that I did to kind of show you, like, even like this design here. It's this same design, but again, it's like I'm simplifying it and then just magnifying it down. See the fractal aspect of it. Here, you can see it here too. You can get the Fibonacci sequence. And again, these templates, these fractal templates, they show up in absolutely everything. Not even just the dimensions of our body and just how everything grows, but even within our calendrical systems and our calendars, and how certain events keep repeating themselves. It follows a certain mathematic procedure, because mathematics is at the root of all of our realities. It is the primary language. Everything else is just, math is what allows us to identify the intelligent aspects of it. It does demonstrate and helps us to discover the logos, right? The intelligence, the logic behind reality. And that's what allowed me to come to some, pretty much all these conclusions. It's, you can't come to these realizations if you're not willing to put yourself in that position. Right? If you want to receive the returning frequency of the mind taking accountability for its existence, you have to put yourself in that position. And that's what allows you to receive that signal and the knowing of how it brought itself into existence. And this is really what a lot of, like with Christ and stuff, like being nailed to the cross. I made another video where I talk about how the cross is to test if you're self-aware or not. Right? That the cross represents you taking full accountability for your existence. You put yourself on the cross. You receive that returning frequency. This, a lot of people call this death, because you will have like a near-death experience, because when you put yourself in that position, naturally it's such an intense experience. It is going to cause your consciousness to try to fold through itself. And but when that happened to me, my consciousness folding through itself, I came across that entity, that red dragon, which I identify it is Yahweh. It is the serpent that wanted to eat me and keep me within a certain program. But I fought it. And by defeating it, I became HAWAYAKA. I became someone who knows I brought myself into existence, that I continue to will myself into existence and speak myself into existence. And that's it, everybody. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed some of the drawings. I hope the drawings kind of help demonstrate what I've been talking about the logos, the structure it is a real thing. It is not like this metaphorical. It's not just metaphorical, and it's not. We are that logo. The logos is that eternal structure that can create any and all things, the eternal prism. And it's everything is made through it, because it is the imagination. It is the imagination. It is the engine that allows things to be imagined. It is a prism, because in order to imagine anything, you have to create images, and images require that prism for the light to shine through in order for that to begin to create any type of shape. So this is what that is. And then by doing that, that creates a shim, or a soul, or a shell. A shim is a shell, is also a soul. It's also a pillar, a pyramid. Because that's what the Great Pyramid is. It is a built in stone container of knowledge of the human soul as it pertains today. It represents the coding of this reality that we live in. And if we want to change reality, we change ourselves. How do you change yourself? We dissolve. It's like the butterfly becoming, or the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. We go through the process of dissolving ourselves, becoming more aware of ourselves, of our soul, to identify the things and how it's operating, so we can reverse engineer it, become more aware of it, so we can then adjust and attune the programming. It's like changing the frequency, which in the frequency changes, that then will change everything on a very, even on an atomic level, where everything will begin to mutate and change because the program's changed and we're moving to a different reality. And, the old one can dissolve and a new one gets birthed. But what is common through all realities, in my opinion, is going to be this logos. It is going to be this design, because this design creates the template that creates any and all design. It is the merging of opposites, right? It represents the squaring of the circle and the circling of the square. It's able to perfectly reflect itself. It represents perfect self-reflection. And with that template, being a co-creator is you get to operate within the eternal, prism the ability to manifest and create things. And that's what we're here to do, is learn how to be better manifestors, how to be better co-creators. Where eventually we're creating entire universes, we're creating entire realities, and all kinds of cool stuff that we can do that I believe is our destiny. That's what we're here to do and learn, to really learn our capabilities, and learn not to be afraid of them, because a lot of it is the fear. We know a lot of people's fear is really the fear of our own ability and what we're capable of, because we are capable of doing so many amazing great things. And it's really important that we learn how to harness those things in a different direction, especially the direction it's going now. So, but yeah, that's it, y'all. We are the Word made flesh. We are continually making ourselves. You become what you worship, and what you worship is what's in your head, what's in your mind, what's in the capstone, what's within the prism, what's within here changes the algorithm in which how reality reflects itself, which becomes the image that we make ourselves through and what reality gets made through. And we have the ability to change reality. But to change reality, we have to change ourselves. And with that being said, have a good one, and I'll talk to y'all later.